So Sarah, you and I met at a women's leadership conference where we were both speakers, and I got to just sit there and admire everything you had to say and your insights. But one thing that I know I've found so many times, and I'm guilty of it myself, is just we doubt ourselves too much, we back ourselves too little, and we too often don't ask for what it is we want, you know, just to own our worth and ask for it. And
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I think in really specific ways and in big ways too.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember my first job in television. So I'd been looking for a while, and you know, it was not instantly obvious to people that they should hire me, much as it was obvious to me myself. And you know, I'm shocked and, you know, saddened to say that dozens actually said no. And
Fools.
No, it's very, very clever. I had no skill. I had a videotape, and I'm not saying this. This is genuinely true. I had one news story, one little piece of anchoring that I'd done at CNN in the middle of the night as an intern, where I was wearing a bow tie and had arched my eyebrows. So I looked more. I was awful, and it was like the style.
Is that online, by the way? Because I would love to see that.
No, I'm burning it. I've burned all copies, but it was so bad. So surprisingly, I didn't get a job. So finally, I realized that if I went myself, that I might have a chance. And there I was actually resourceful. So I would call up the news directors. I recommend this for anybody with any job. And I would say, as it happens, I'm going to be in your town in Macon, Georgia, next Wednesday. And I just wondered if you would have a chance to meet. Now, I had no intention of going to Macon unless they were going to give me an interview. But I always said I was already there.
Yeah.
So then they would usually say, well, I don't have time. And I'd say, well, just 15 minutes for me to drop in because I'm there. And they would usually feel like they had to. If you can get yourself...
You show you're that keen.
If you show you're there in that chair, it is so hard to say no to people. So I started to get these interviews, and then I would have one person connect me to the next. You know, I'd just sit there desperately asking, well, is there anyone you can recommend? And they were so desperate to get me out of there, they'd recommend their friend. And then I'd say, your friend so-and-so foolishly told me to call you, and now it's... So slowly, I finally get a call back. I go down for the interview. And I'm super excited. And I said, okay, you know, I finished the interview, and the news director looks at me and he goes, well, would you like to be the anchor and a reporter at 9 Alive News? It was in Tupelo. You don't know how excited I was.
Can you just tell me where Tupelo is, though?
Oh, right next to One Below? That's a bad joke. It is near Memphis.
Memphis, okay, Tennessee.
And actually, it was spectacular. It was fabulous. I had a great time. But that was the first joke they told me. Tupelo, Mississippi. And Tupelo, I'd never been to Mississippi. It's famously, now you're going to know this, the birthplace of Elvis.
Well, I know he's...
Memphis.
Yes,
you think of him with Memphis, but see?
Okay.
Yes,
Tupelo,
so I knew...
Tennessee.
See what I mean? You just never...
You learn something every day.
So I take that, you know, so he offers me this job, and I was over the moon. And by the way, you would no more get that job, like just rocking up today, than that I did. I mean, now it's like years to get that job, and I'm not kidding. But then they again foolishly offered it to me. And so he said, do you want this? And I said, yes. I just said yes.
Yeah.
And he started laughing. And he goes, can I give you a piece of advice for your next interview? And I said, yes. And he said, you might want to ask what I'm going to pay you. It never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that I had any bargain. You know, to say that I was grateful is, you know, really underestimating my level of gratitude. So yeah, we don't think. I only thought, maybe that's not such a great story because I was really lucky he gave me that job. But you know, maybe in the course of...
You could have got 20% more money.
I could have gotten maybe 5, but you know, I could have gotten $10 more a week. It wasn't very much they paid me. But the point of the matter is, I think that I have to check myself because I'm very capable of doing that to this day.
Well, and there is so much research that shows that women don't ask and women don't negotiate. And they start out their careers on less because more men say, hey, I want more straight out of college or university. And they set off in a different trajectory. You know, they're always asking for more, and then if you just even put a standard increase on it, it just ends up at a very different place 20 years down the track.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think it is important. And the other thing I would say is the times when I have forced myself. I mean, the one that comes to mind is when I was at NBC, and I was really my first story, or second, I can't remember, at NBC was covering the Macy's Day Parade. And to be honest, as much as that's a wonderful parade, that was not why I had gone to the network. And I did not want to be covering parades. And I thought, how am I going to convince them that I can do hard news? So it was right at the time that the Marines were going into Somalia. And I just had no idea, but I thought it never hurts to ask. So I went around the corner to the foreign news editor's office, and his door was open, and I tiptoed in, and he looked at me, and I said, 5 minutes? And he said, feel free, sit down. He couldn't have been nicer. And I said, well, I know that Marines have gone in, NBC in Mogadishu, Christmas, people might want to come home. If you need anybody else, I would just love to go. And he just nodded, and I backed out, and I thought that was a disaster, and I'm probably going to be fired. And later that day, some very helpful person on the desk came over and said, have you had your shots?
Wow.
And I went, what? And she said, well, you're on the plane tonight to
Mogadishu.
So
Wow.
when you do ask, and that changed my life at NBC.
Yeah.
From that moment.
Yeah.
That was the change.
And just, I guess my point there, you had to have the guts or the balls or whatever you want to call it to just front on in there, because it was pretty gutsy to do that. You were just a little insignificant person in their eyes of the network.
Yes, indeed.
But you know, there's
my stomach hurt. My stomach hurt as I did it. I was nervous. I really didn't know what but I thought, how can anyone fault me for asking? He's gonna say no. Yeah. He's going to say no, but he can't yell at me for asking, hopefully.
But you had to risk the rejection and the possibility of being yelled at, or even, you know, maybe when we're
laughed at, I think was what I was afraid of. And that's not fun. I think we'd actually rather be yelled at than laughed at. We hate being laughed at.
But how often do we not do things because we're afraid of the possibility of being humiliated or rejected, or the sting that we'll feel if we are.
That's right.
And so we don't ask, and we don't put ourselves forward, and we don't negotiate, and we miss out on ever knowing it could happen, and that changed everything for you.
And you know what? When I got on that plane, and I'm reading everything, and which I already had been, and then I landed, and I got there, I had another moment of just a real crisis of confidence, and I thought, how am I going to do this? Now I've actually, the imposter syndrome that they talk about, that's exactly how I felt. And I thought, what am I going to do? I looked around the room, and, it was very difficult conditions, but every single person I saw in that room, I recognized from our network. Yeah. And they were famous.
Veteran bar correspondents.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm the newbie who's just off the Macy's Day Parade. And I just looked at them and I thought, what the heck am I going to do? And I went over to Martin Fletcher, who was at that time our Jerusalem or Tel Aviv correspondent in the Mideast, and he had the nicest face, and he still does. He's a great guy. And I said, any tips? And he said, sure. Just go outside. And I looked at him and I said, and then what? He said, anybody you meet is a story. And that was it. That was the best advice anyone ever gave me. I stopped being insecure. And from there on, on we went. But that was just, he gave me the confidence to trust myself. You know what you're doing? Go on out the door. Do it.
You know what? It is such a powerful metaphor, whether you're a journalist or not.
Doesn't matter.
Just bloody well show up.
Get out the door.
Just
don't sit there.
Up.
You're not doing it in your living room.
I tell you what,
have to get out the door.
Every single thing, I think, throughout my professional life, but just across the board, has come from just getting out of the comfort zone, putting myself out there, just in one way, shape or form, risking falling flat on the face, risking people going, what the hell, who are you to do that?
Exactly.
And very rarely do they actually do that.
No, they actually really, most of the time, want you to succeed. Yeah. And the people who are laughing, and they do exist, I've gotten letters from those people. Yeah. And you just mostly me laugh, you know?
Yeah.
That lipstick, what were you thinking? I don't know. Was it a bad color? Probably.
Move on.
You know, life is short. Don't let that stuff stick.
Well, I think if we're
stick.
brave enough often enough, sometimes we fall on our face, and sometimes people don't like who we are and what we're doing.
That's okay, but there's way more people. There's just in general way more who are saying, good on you.
Yeah. You
and
just get more out of life when you're being bold and brave and putting yourself out there.
Absolutely.